AT Kearney has come out with its detailed study on the top foreign direct investment destinations across the globe, and India has moved up to number 8 on that list. Shereen has a special guest with her. Shereen, over to you.
Well, AT Kearney has put out its detailed study on FDI destinations, and India has moved up a spot from 7 to 8 now on that index. Joining us now is the author of the report. Paul, thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Let me start by asking you about the key findings and the highlights as far as India is concerned. So confidence level more optimistic, so about 31% feel more optimistic, 16% are pessimistic, but 25% believe that India is chaotic, moving up a spot to number 8 now on the list of FDI destinations. What's the overall India story for global investors looking like?
Well, the overall story, Shereen, is quite a good one. First, globally, investors this year are more bullish about the global economy than they were a year ago. In fact, 3/4 of them say that they plan to increase foreign direct investment over the course of the next 3 years. And then specifically with respect to India, this is the second year in a row that India appears among the top 10 most favored destinations for foreign direct investment in the world. And in fact, as you said, it moved up a spot to number 8. So it's a very good news story for India this year, even though, as always, there are some areas of concern, particularly around the regulatory environment, questions generally about security and about bureaucracy. But those are issues which we think and investors believe the Modi government is addressing. And 2/3 of investors believe that India's investment environment is actually going to improve in the medium term.
Paul, speaking of India as a manufacturing hub, because the government has pitched the Make in India story as its big mission to try and attract FDI into the manufacturing sector. If I were to look at your index, cost of labor, that's where India performs best on, 32% saying the cost of labor is one of the key parameters while looking at investing in India, followed by the strength of the domestic market. So from a cost competitiveness aspect, India still attractive enough?
Yes, I think here again, the Modi government policy of domestic manufacturing emphasis is reflected in what investors say are the inherent strengths of the Indian economy as an investment destination. Good skilled labor and lower cost labor obviously positions India to take advantage of the Make in India plans that the Modi government is implementing, in addition to, of course, the huge internal market that a country of 1.3 billion people represents.
But what could be the headwinds to foreign direct investment into countries like India? The US has emerged as the #1 investment destination on your index. The UK, despite the Brexit uncertainty, continues to be in the top 5 list as well. What could be the headwinds to FDI coming into markets like India, especially when, President Trump is talking about hire American, buy American? We're seeing similar voices coming in from other parts of the world as well.
Well, this is one of the interesting results this year, and why we in AT Kearney call the index this year glass half full. And the reason is that while investors are optimistic about the economic prospects for the business environment, with 75% indicating that they intend to increase foreign direct investment over the next 3 years, and 60% of investors saying they're more optimistic about the global economy. On the other hand, they're more pessimistic and more concerned about the politics, about the prospect for protectionism, about increased regulatory concern, about geopolitical instability. So this is the glass half empty side of the equation, and particularly with respect to India, I think there's no difference. Investors are buoyed by many of the policies that the Modi government is implementing to reduce regulation, to abolish the Foreign Investment Promotion Board, to increase efficiencies. On the other hand, there's always concern about whether or not these policies will be effectively implemented and sustained. And there's concern about the global business environment and instability that we see in many parts of the world because of geopolitical tensions.
Paul, you know, when we talk about potential risks now, and I understand that over half of investors are looking to increase their investments in India if the GST is successful. We hope that the GST will roll out on the 1st of July. That's the anticipated timeline that the government is working with. Also, you know, is there a sectoral preference that seems to emerge from your study?
Well, I think investors are looking broadly at the Indian economy, increasingly with some of the improved access to the retail sector. This is obviously going to be of increased interest to investors. Manufacturing, you've got a huge working age population. Almost half of India's population is working age, 842 million people in the workforce, with 500,000 new workers every year. So taking advantage of low-skilled labor in manufacturing. I think there's broad interest in the Indian economy generally, particularly in those sectors that are opening up to foreign investment opportunities.
Paul, let me ask you a quick question about what you expect in terms of changes in the U.S. There's a lot of anticipation around the latest executive order that President Trump is likely to sign, what it's going to mean in terms of hire American, the H-1B visa policy, manufacturing in America, foreign direct investment into countries like India. You know, the U.S. emerging as the #1 investment destination on your survey, but how are you reading the state of the U.S. economy and what the Trump presidency could mean?
Well, the United States has consistently been, for the last 5 years, in the #1 position as the most attractive destination for foreign direct investment. And this is based less on individual policies of a given administration and more about the fundamentals of the U.S. economy, the strong internal market, the openness to technology, the good endowment of natural resources. But in addition, this year, investors all over the world concerned about protectionism and market access and whether or not we're moving, as we in AT Kearney say, to a world that's more islandized. Foreign direct investment becomes a way to get behind national borders and to be able to have access to a market by having a presence in that market. So the particular policies that the Trump administration or any government might articulate that might look like it segments or protects the market, in fact, might encourage foreign direct investment where investors try to position themselves in that market so they can continue to have access behind what might be more barriers to entry.
Well, Paul, always a pleasure. Thanks very much for joining us and taking us through the highlights of the AT Kearney survey. India coming in at the #8 spot as a destination for foreign direct investment. That's the second year in a row that India finds itself in the top 10. Paul, always a pleasure. Thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18.